But that's just.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Is Dean on or not? Is that Dean's?
Yeah, I'm on.
Thank you, Dean.
Okay, I need you to approve the tentative agenda.
Make a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes. Could you read the minutes from last meeting, Betty, please?
February 6th, 2023, Chairman Cluse called the regular meeting of the Wright County Board of Supervisors to order at 9 a.m. Members present were Cluse, Rasmussen, and Helgevold. Motion by Rasmussen, second by Helgevold to approve the tentative agenda. Motion carries. Minutes of the previous regular meeting of January 30th, 2023 were read and approved. Approved claims for payment. Motion by Helgevold, second by Rasmussen to receive the monthly revenue report from the Wright County Sheriff. Motion carries. Motion by Rasmussen, second by Helgevold to approve resolution 2023-11, accepting the Wright County Compensation Board's recommendation for the compensation schedule for the elected officials beginning July 1, 2023. By roll call vote, ayes, Cluse, Rasmussen, and Helgevold, nays none. Resolution 2023-11 duly passes and reads as follows. And there you can see the full resolution in its entirety, giving elected officials a 3% raise. Adam Clemens, Wright County engineer, gave an update on the secondary roads. There were 16 work orders completed last week, with 10 of them being snow removal using the blower. All personnel went out at 5 a.m. on Sunday, January 29th and Friday, February 3rd for winter operations. Clemens spoke about the SS4A grant that was awarded to the Iowa County Engineers Program. This grant will allow for local road safety plans to be developed in Wright County. Motion by Helgevold, seconded by Rasmussen to open the public hearing on the maximum property tax dollars. Motion carries. There was no public input. Motion by Rasmussen, seconded by Helgevold to close the public hearing on the maximum property tax dollars. Motion carries. Bob Powers with Paradigm Benefits presented information regarding the county's partial side fund. The board will act on the health insurance costs and partial side fund at a later date. Motion by Helgevold, seconded by Rasmussen to adjourn the meeting. Motion carries.
Any additions or corrections? If not, they stand as approved as read. Claims have been around. Open forum for public input. Yes, Bob.
Yes, I'd like to thank you guys for your work, ISAC, that you did, and the whole, all the county supervisors and this pipeline deal. Also, I want to thank Dave Johnson. Several months ago, he put on a little program. You guys are having some talk about drainage, and it didn't have anything to do with pipeline. But between him and Chris Gruenhagen, the Farm Bureau, two different attorneys, I've been documenting everything. And before we start our entertainment for the day later on at 9:30, I'd like to read your letter filed with the Utilities Board from the Hancock County Republican Central Committee. It's on January 10th, all the legislators. We have the following all important addition to that communication. The second page of the communication be sent on the 10th, so they had sent some other stuff on this pipeline. About the safety, and that's what we're talking about here today, I think. The under USB 905 in January 1st, 25, CARB must adopt regulations creating a state permitting framework for approval of CCS and CDR project, along with strong messages of support for CCS SB 905, as noted above, has also created some uncertainty around the political, practical implementation of carbon pipelines. A temporary ban of transfer CO2 through pipelines until the U.S. Department of Transportation Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration updates its safety requirements. There's all kinds of websites and stuff to back it up. They put a complete moratorium on all carbon pipelines and transmission, and even doing business with them in California. I think California's halfway nuts sometimes, but at least they're looking into the future. I'm not saying absolute no to the pipeline. I know there's other people here that are probably going to speak a little different than that today, because it would be tax dollars and jobs if you look at it from that angle, but they don't have this figured out yet. And we need a little caution. That's all we need. And we're gonna hear from new entertainers today. I call them counterfeit entertainers. My favorite word at home is carpet painters. They wanna come in and basically rape a few farmers, take all their land. They aren't taking all of it, but they're sequestering it. And once you sign an easement, it's forever. Ever and ever. And there isn't enough compensation started for it. It's not like the windmills. It's not like the solar panels. It's completely different. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Bob.
I have a couple one document here, I don't know if you realize, but as a landowner, we are uninsurable for anything that happens with the pipeline, if it breaks, when it breaks, when it ruptures. Insurance companies will not cover it. I have a letter here for you guys to keep. This is also the latest map that Summit sent through to the IUB of all the red marks in Wright County that are not signing. I think that should speak volumes for the supervisors on what your constituents want. The bottom paragraph says a lot on that letter.
For the record, that's Lisa Stuck.
Thank you.
I blew up the names, the
Oh.
map, first map is the original map, but then I went through and kind of blew up because it's too
Okay.
hard to read.
And this was updated when, do you believe?
It was sent through to the IUB a week ago. They withdrew an exhibit H. There was someone that had signed, and that was the map that was attached to that,
Okay.
to that exhibit H that was withdrawn.
The latest one filed was on the 9th of February.
Okay,
Dean, is that what you have posted on the wall?
No, that's from the 26th of January.
Thank you.
There's been five other parcels that have signed easements. Right now, I'd say that we're probably at about right at 50%. Landowners have signed voluntary easements and 50% have not.
put these handouts in your mailbox, Dean, so when you get back, you can look at them.
Perfect, thank you.
Would you read the last paragraph of the state law?
As history has proved, any pipeline has a chance to fail, leak, and seep, resulting in significant damage to life and property. To place this type of risk or burden upon unwilling landowners like yourselves as tantamount to placing a risk to your livelihood without your permission. In summary, having a pipeline running through your property carrying CO2, a pollutant, subjects you to substantial uninsurable exposure. And that's a letter through State Farm.
Anybody else for public input?
Yes, my name is Julie Glade. I'm an affected landowner south of Clarion here. I am greatly concerned about the safety of this proposed pipeline. It's scheduled to go in within 600 feet of our farmhouse. And that's way too close, 600 feet. If there would be a rupture close to our home, we would have minutes to get to safety. And that's just unacceptable to have it that close to our well water. I'm concerned about our drinking water down the road. And according to, and I've also got here, I don't know if you've seen this, I might have emailed it to you. The carbon dioxide study that has been performed by EMS official, a firefighter, I believe is a first responder. And has done plume studies. And this study shows that we would have probably 2 minutes to get to our And he's saying that anyone living within 1,200 feet of these pipelines should have SCBA's, self-contained breathing apparatus. And I'm wondering if somebody's gonna provide those to us and bring us that close to a pipeline. And I don't feel like we should have to even. I can't imagine having to live like that. I'm also concerned about longevity of the pipelines. How I'd like to just ask them maybe how long their life expectancy is, nothing lasts forever. What's the end plan for the pipelines that they would be installed?
Thank you.
I'm Marjorie Swan, and this is my sister Ramona Jean Renner, we're landowner stop gas, and I've got some information for you, just like supervisors are going to look at. This is about Qatar, Mississippi, there's a website, and then this is about all the counties that have filed objections, and there's our city so far that have filed objection. Maybe you know, but I just can't more about carbon safety. And this is something that the legislatures are working on that I don't know, maybe you can help promote the legislators. And here's another pipeline safety. And this is about some carbon investors. Give you a little heads up about that. And this is just some letters from people in the area that have been harassed by some, excuse me. And this is another, maybe another way to change some of our coding for Iowa, for the legislators and representatives. And I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yes,
I have one question. You have hired ISG to, if this goes through, to monitor.
yes,
And I remember reading on one of the things in your minutes that ISG had recommended that digging, the work stop if they create trenches, higher trenches, whatever, 1 foot deep. Now, that's a foot. Do you have any input on what you can tell them you want? Or tell them what guidelines you would like?
I think we'd be able to do that, tell them how we want it.
Dean, I think there was a resolution and that Dean is working on with the IDDA on different standards of what for the moisture or the soil saturation. I know that I spoke to a gentleman last week about like at 60% soil saturation, you can go out and plant your field. And so they put it, and ISU has that information as to where your soil saturation is, what your rainfall is. And, so I think if not through this resolution that the county does, individual contracts, if you does get to that where you negotiate different contracts, you can talk about soil saturation and that you don't want them in there if it's such a percentage.
Correct, and that's the study that Iowa State University through ISAC funding is trying to get that study done so that it can be presented to the legislature and used in 479 B, where it talks about saturated soils. In my experience with, at least with the windmills, when they got saturated soils, they're going to bring in matting to, again, there's definitely an impact. And I think we saw with Dakota Access that that they will find a way to work around that. That's going to be why it's so important for us to have a great relationship with the county inspector, if in fact this does go through.
Could you give us a synopsis of what Dean just said? It's hard to hear back there.
Yeah. He said that is, Dean, can you want to repeat some of that again?
You just turn your volume up, Dean.
I'm turning the volume up so you can hear you a little better.
Okay, I've got my volume all the way up on my phone. I don't know if you can hear me any better now
That's
or
a
not.
lot better, Dean.
Okay, so What I said was concerning the saturation studies, Iowa State Association of Counties is getting Iowa State University to do this study. And what Betty's referring to is that Iowa State, we think, already has that information on soil saturation. But the importance of, if you're a private landowner and you're going to negotiate one of these easements, that should be a talking point and something that's written into the easement for that understanding, because the way that the law is currently written, ruts greater than 12 inches, well, they're going to overcome that by bringing matting in and putting matting down. It's not a perfect fix, that's for sure.
That help you, Annie?
Yes, and thank you for turning that on.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. I've really never messed much with that. And I'm like, oh, I hope I don't cut them off.
An eminent domain versus easement signings, as far as the standards that they're gonna abide by. Because like the Iowa State study, are they going to actually abide by that if they're gonna take the farms and do what they want with them? Who's to say that they're actually gonna abide by it? Is that going to weigh on the county inspector, or how is that going to be determined?
I think once you've signed a voluntary easement, unless you've got that written into the easement, I think that they're going to have the right to do what they want.
Okay.
That's the purpose of an easement, is to grant permission for you to do with that portion of the property as you like.
Okay, there's a gentleman here that'd like to speak. Go ahead.
I can answer that question.
Okay,
Section 9 and the AIMP apply regardless. That's the state restrictions that dictate how work is performed on your property and the standards that your state inspection actually adhere us to.
So whether there's whether it's taken by eminent domain, if that goes through or not, with a voluntary
Correct.
easement, the standards stay the same.
Correct. The only thing that would differ would be what would be called an Exhibit C, which would be specific requirements, such as if we're going for, like, throughout all 5 states, we're going a minimum 4 foot of depth. If we negotiate, on a landowner's property that we're going 6 feet, that wouldn't be captured otherwise. So it's special circumstances like that wouldn't translate essentially,
Okay.
but the state requirements, they're there. We can't get around those.
and where's that located at, the state requirements?
I don't know exactly where it's
Yep,
located.
and,
I know it's section 9 and it's the AIMP. Agricultural Impact and Mitigation Plan.
So these farmers, some farmers know how deep their tile is, some of the other ones don't. So if you're off on that, do they retrench? Do they go?
It's a field correction. So say, a farmer says, hey, my tile's at 4 feet and we go 5.5 or 6 feet deep and we encounter his tile at that depth. If it's shifted, then we'll just back up and essentially go deeper.
Okay.
I mean,
And the variance, how deep, how far from the tile?
typically a foot.
A foot,
Yes, sir.
from the top or the bottom?
From the bottom.
Okay.
If field variances like that, that occurs pretty frequently, just because you don't know until you're out there doing it. So that's something where, any pipeline company would be kind of aware of that.
Okay.
Some of the tile have been, were hand dug in the 1800s,
Right.
probably.
Exactly.
And I've got a question on 4 foot deep. If you look out here, the reason this basement's is deep is because it's below the frost line, so it doesn't heave. Well, that's deeper than 4 foot in Iowa. Maybe it isn't in Texas, but it is in Iowa. The ground. And what's that do to your pipe?
That's not effective. It doesn't affect the pipe.
I don't believe that one bit. It affects this footing. It affects the pipe.
Any other common carrier here in the state is gonna go 3 foot at a minimum. That's federal requirement from a cost.
3 foot minimum,
Minimum, correct. So from a cost perspective, when a company looks at coming to laying a pipe, and this has at least been in my experience in every company I've worked for, they're gonna look at it from a cost perspective, so they're gonna do the minimum. That's why we're taking that a little bit further and going an extra foot of depth at a minimum. And then as you're doing these negotiations, if you do have tile at 4 feet, will typically go under the tile.
I've got a statement for. Here's a question. What if your tile is 7 foot deep? I have a farm that I put the tile in myself, that it is set 7 foot, and I also have tile on that farm that is at 3 foot. So enlighten me on if you go in at 6 foot. How am I going to correct my tile or make improvements to my tile when the rate of flow is from 7 foot to 3 foot across that farm?
Again, it's just a negotiation. Typically, if that was a special situation, we'd have a construction manager out there to go through a constructability review to determine the best path forward.
So would they have to agree on that prior to, and that item C, for variances? I mean, would that have to be agreed on beforehand? I mean,
What do you mean?
you mentioned before that you had to,
So the exhibit C is.
yeah. the exhibit C.
It's, your easement agreement is a fixed document.
Okay.
And then anything that would be a variance per a specific landowner would go what's called the exhibit C and just be attached. So all that discussion would take place ahead of time. It would go onto the exhibit C, be recorded, and then that would be part of their signed easement at the end of the day. And then everything from the exhibit C is translated to what's called a construction line list. And that's what's handed over to the construction contractors at the end of the day. So to ensure that they adhere to those when they're out there and encounter that track.
So when they're going onto your property, then that exhibit C would have to be spelled out very clearly.
And what if I refuse to sign any easements?
That's completely up to you.
Yeah, it is up to me. It's my farm.
Yeah.
100%.
Don't you have to stay below tile though?
I'm sorry.
Don't you have to stay below tile?
It varies. I mean, again, 4 foot of depth. That's our minimum. If you had tile that was, 8 feet, 10 feet deep on your property and you didn't go through negotiations, then, we're gonna work with what we have.
So what it seems to me, you're saying you're really not gonna work with people
We,
that don't sign voluntary easements. I don't think there's many of us here that are going to sign.
my
You're not
point
gonna work with those people?
would be if you have specific situations that you'd like to be taken into consideration, then that's why the negotiations are so important.
You may not know that until you get there.
Point of perspective here, some facts about Wright County, when we're talking about the tile. There's 46 miles of anticipated pipeline in the county, 3 state highways crossed, 3 railroad crossings, 43 secondary highway crossings. Approximately 283 parcels of land are gonna be affected, plus 854 acres of land in the pathway, including 35 drainage districts. So, amount of perspective, this is gonna be very difficult for them to maintain that standard over 35 drainage districts, because there's a high rate of fall right now. I mean, anybody that knows tile knows that, you have to have fall in order to get the water to flow. So they cut the tile, they disrupt the tile, you've got more farm ground that's gonna be rendered inert because of their mistakes. So just something to think about.
Yes.
In Shelby County, you said we would have to back up, redig, to make it deeper, we have to go underneath their tile lines. So if he had 7 foot deep, you have to back up and go under that 7 foot.
Again, if it was negotiated that he had his tile at 7 feet.
That's
are
not
not-
what you said in Shelby.
And that isn't what
You're
we're
not
interested
saying that you're deep below
You're not
tile.
quoting me.
Oh, who was Ruscio?
I'm not Ruscio.
Okay.
My name's Grant Terry.
So why aren't you all on the same page? Why are we all hearing the same thing? We hear.
And you were at Shelby County.
Yes, if you would allow me to speak.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, if you're on a negotiated track and it was stated that, hey, my tile is at 4 feet or 7 feet, if you're gonna quote Isaac to the T, 7 feet. And that's what our construction contractors are accounting for when they approach that property. If they come, they cut and say, hey, this tile is not 7 feet, it's actually at 8 feet. Then that's when we have to make that adjustment right there. Because construction's not gonna shut down. And just because the tile's a little bit deeper than what was discussed, doesn't affect the construction at the end of the day. They're just gonna have to be able to make that adjustment.
But if you don't negotiate that ahead of time, and let's say it goes from a domain, and you have a 7-foot tile. There's no obligation by carbon subject to go any deeper, they can still stay at the minimum floor.
They're not gonna know it's there unless they impact it.
That's why the negotiation is so important, because if we don't have the information, then
But we don't want to sign voluntary easements. You're gonna have to take it from us. And.
Yeah.
How can the Board of Supervisors, I mean, can you stop this in any way?
We can protect the landowners as much as we can. We can protect the drainage district assets, our roads and things like that. But it will be the utility board that decides whether they can
So you
use,
can't stop them from stealing our farmland.
we have no authority.
Who pays taxes on that easement then once they come in and steal it? If they come in and steal it?
They'll be paying taxes on the pipeline and you'll be paying taxes on the land.
Oh, so we still have to pay taxes on their easement, but it's our responsibility too, if it breaks or punctures. Then it's our responsibility and we could go bankrupt trying to.
Yeah, and that's where it's frustrating to us is, we have limited power that we can do. The power that we can do is if it does come here is to have them abide by the rules as much as we can do in our power, make sure that we're prepared for it to come in. But the aspect of saying, no, you can't is not something that we have that authority of.
Well, the safety aspect is a big thing.
Absolutely.
Our two sons are first responders. Safety of this, I mean. There's nothing, he was talking about it 3-foot minimum. Well, none of those pipelines have a hazardous material running through them. So that's a big concern of the landowners, not only taking and stealing our land and ruining our farmland. Is the safety. And you need to keep, the Wright County residents safe.
I totally agree. And we're in contact with our legislators, but at that point, there's so much we can do, but hearing from people like you in Des Moines is going to be a key.
They hear from us.
Yes.
Question, this pipeline essentially will probably be depreciated. Can you attest to the depreciation schedule on the pipeline? It's just like a fence row, or you can depreciate tile on your taxes. So how are you going to depreciate it, still taking money from a 45K tax credit? And then paying our county less and less every year as you depreciate that out, even though you're taking our money from the tax credits and then giving back less. So when you talk about tax credit and tax money coming back into the county, that's going to decline over the course of time.
I don't think your depreciation on your taxes will affect your aspect of the property tax.
Right, but their depreciation, what they're paying taxes on, is what I'm
Will
asking.
affect the county's income.
When they're promising tax dollars to pay back into the county, is there a depreciation schedule that's gonna render that less and less every year?
At this time, we don't even know the dollar amount of the taxes is going to be.
Because they won't stand on one. And they'll tell the same amount to every county, and yet Wright County has more pipeline.
We have the
than
most,
counties.
we have the most.
Yes.
Yeah. And these are the questions that, during their presentation, we'll hear them, but these are the questions that we still don't have answers to.
Sure,
The safety is a huge issue.
but those are questions that need to be asked,
Absolutely.
for sure. Another question I have too is that, week ago, 10 days ago, someone approached the town of Rowan, Iowa about water rights. And about making civic improvements to make a deal with the city of Rowan for access to their water. Is the county aware of that?
I have no idea.
No,
Okay. Yeah, and they rejected it. But if you talk to Mayor Groom or you look back into it, they approached them for water rights. So I have a question on what are they approaching them for their water rights in Rowan, Iowa? There's no pipeline even close to it. So what's the water?
I would have to make an assumption. I would assume it's for our capture side, but again, I don't have all the details on that.
Would that be for the building of it then?
I not necessarily for the building. I mean, they probably utilize some water during the capture process. But that would be my assumption. It wouldn't be for at least the pipeline aspect of it.
Somebody said it was for the hydrostatic test. But that's just an assumption.
Yeah.
I mean, for the actual test of the line itself, at the end of the day, we will require a substantial amount of water, but it won't be, what typically when you do a hydrostatic test like that, you'll purchase, within 20 or 25 miles of water for a specific line. and then you just push it from section to section. That way you're not.
From
having-
shut off valve to shut off valve and test it that way.
Yeah, they'll usually do like a 20 or 25 mile test segment. And then they'll just push the water to the next segment so that you're not having to procure water in, every certain location. You'll just procure that first bit and then push it.
Okay.
Another question on the 4 foot deep. That CO2, the supercritical CO2 has to be above 88 degrees. How do you maintain 88 degrees through the winter? I mean, that's only if supercritical exists. It has to be 88 degrees and I don't know, 1500 PSI or something like that. And anything other than that, it's not supercritical. And if it's not supercritical, it takes a lot more power to pump it. So you want to, and I don't understand how they keep it 88 degrees.
Again, it's based on our hydraulics. There's no concern.
Well, show us that. Show it. Publish it. This idea of keeping everything a secret. You haven't done any plume tests, you haven't done a lot of things that most people would think you do first. Before you even thought about doing the pipeline.
Okay, we're gonna close, open forum for just a minute here, and it's 9:30. Bill Sullivan, Summit Carbon Safety Update, and Rod Dylan, Director of Regulatory Compliance with Summit Carbon Solutions Pipeline.
Dylan, yeah.
I think they're on the hallway, right?
What's that?
I think Bill's on the hallway.
I was gonna introduce everybody. Bill, if Bill wants to come in, you can.
Thank you, Bill.
Watch your knees when you sit in that chair, that bottom will get.
Thank you. I do have some handouts, some of them the same as last time I was here, but we do have a new one that we didn't have ready. So it just goes over a little bit more safety information. I only have 10, so if you don't mind, I'll just hand one to the board, and then I know some people out here might want some, but. You're with that, we have some safety information. There we go.
Sure, thank you.
Here we go. Here we go. Did I miss any? Yes. Anybody else?
I can run upstairs and make some more copies if you'd like. Does anybody else need one or want one? Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, so, really the goal here
Charlie,
today
you want me to get you
is,
one?
That's fine.
Hmm?
Yeah, I'm gonna have it.
Oh, okay, good.
so actually, I'll just start by reintroducing myself. My name is Kaylee Langrell. I work for Turnkey Logistics representing Summit Carbon Solutions. I have Bill Sullivan here with me. He's also with Turnkey. And then I have Grant Terry. He is one of the project managers in Iowa. And then on Zoom, I think we have Kylie Lang, one of the other project managers, and Rod Dillon is our Director of Regulatory Compliance. So last month when I was here, I got the chance to speak to County Engineer Mr. Clements after the meeting, and I think we both agreed it would be a good idea to have Rod come on and kind of answer some of y'all's specific safety questions. So that's the main goal today, is just to answer some of y'all's questions to the best of our ability. One thing I can touch on just before we get into it, some of the questions that have already been asked. I know you talked about the responsibility. I can tell you that the liability does fall on Summit Carbon Solutions in all the cases except gross negligence. So, I think I've been here before and kind of given this example. If you took an axe out to the pipeline and hit it and something happened, that's the only kind of case when it would fall on someone other than Summit Carbon.
So like if a tractor would get stuck and something would happen to damage it that way, that would not be our fault.
No, that's you going about your day, doing your normal business. So that would not be gross negligence.
Question. What happens when you sell the pipeline?
So I can speak to that a little bit. The easement stays the same. So whoever we sold it to, it would have to be used for the same thing.
What liability?
What
The liability.
stays the same?
Okay, so what happens if you guys get sued and you decide to exceed the LLC because LLC is limited liability corporation to promote limited liability? Say somebody sues you because they die and you guys go, we're dissolving, then what happens?
I'm not, you might be speaking over my head there a little bit. I don't have a degree in law, so I'm not really sure on.
Good to go out, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah. Anything
Basically,
else?
just how much coverage are you talking though? I mean, how do we know? Is every farm gonna be different? Is it gonna be one lump sum for everybody?
For, as far as the liability goes, I'm sure there's insurance on that. I mean, I'm not a part of that discussion, but I do want to introduce or let Rod introduce himself so he can kind of go over his background. And then we can jump into more safety questions for you guys. So Rod, if you're on, I see your name. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What questions do you have?
Did you want to introduce yourself and give like some of your background, Rod, and then we can jump into questions?
I'm Rod Dillon. I'm the Director of Compliance for Summit Carbon Solutions. I have 40 years of emergency response background, including fire. I work for several environmental companies to respond to different types of spills from pipelines to train derailments, trucks, stuff like that. And then spill management for a company for about 10 years. And then I went for Kinder Morgan and ran their emergency response division for products pipelines across the country. And now I'm at Summit.
You can't hear him very well.
No.
It's kind of muffled.
Mumbling back.
It is loud. I don't.
Plug it in down on
The board's not long enough.
It won't come through the TV. Only can do it out.
Let's see if that.
Hello?
Are you
We're
open
just
for
changing-
questions? Is that what we're
Yes.
at, what they're asking for right now?
No, we're changing the mic so they can hear a little bit better right now, Dean. We're trying to figure out the best way.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, it's on those stories.
The cord is only so long, so I can't move it out further.
How much do we have?
You can ask anybody.
No, it's not much at all.
Yeah, so. Okay, so,
Listening out one ear.
yeah. I don't know if there was any way
Make the
to
volume a little bit
make it louder.
clearer.
What we could do, so we could send it to the TV.
Can you do both owl and TV?
Let's go together.
Okay, Rod, we're gonna try to get it so that you're coming through the TV instead of the owl on the supervisor's desk.
Okay.
Can you try it again, Ryan?
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Did y'all hear what I had to say about my background?
Yes,
Can you run that again, Rod, on your background, please?
Okay, I have about 40 years of background in emergency response, starting with the fire service, then going into working for spill response companies on train derailments and pipelines. And I went to work for Kinder Morgan after that to manage the emergency response division for all of their products pipeline system. And now I'm at Summit doing the same thing. As far as what we're going to do with Summit, once our states give us our permits and we start construction, which will be about a year of constructing, I have a company in place to meet with all first responders and educate them on what the product is, what the pipeline details are, where it's going to be as far as mapping and how to respond and how we're going to deal with protecting the public safely and issuing equipment needed, mainly CO2, O2 monitoring equipment to the first responders and educating them on how to use that product. And we'll develop initial response tactics for every mile of the pipeline system once we have established what every mile is going to be in every wind direction in a mutual type of situation. Then we'll educate all the operations folks to the same level as the first responders because they're going to be our response teams. And then we'll do a tabletop exercise with the first responders and our operations folks along the system before we go into operations.
You guys have
And so
questions?
yes, sir, why are we reluctant to, or why is Carbon Summit Solutions reluctant to provide the data concerning a break in the pipeline, the plume studies? Why? I understand your past history, but you've heard repeatedly at these different meetings people wanting this data. I know that the Iowa Utility Board ruled on the preemption of safety stuff, but that is one of the things that the supervisors are charged with is safety of the people in the county. And why, if you want to work with us, why is that data not being provided?
The dispersion modeling that you're referring to is under development, but the preliminary dispersion that we have already received does show the product as it will escape the pipeline. However, if we just give you a sheet of paper with a dispersion modeling on it, it doesn't detail the environmental considerations that could be involved, that will be involved with the dispersion of this product. And it's not a true, it's not a true estimate of what the product will do once it leaves the pipeline in any given location with terrain, with wind directions, with if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's cold, if it's hot, all of that has to be counted into it. Once I start doing my educating classes with the first responders, I will have a program that we will go along the pipeline system, every mile of the system, as a matter of fact, with the first responders to develop our initial response tactics based on the dispersion modeling.
And why can't we do that now?
I don't have a permit to build this pipeline.
I know you don't have a permit to build the pipeline.
Like I said, once we get a permit to build our pipeline, we'll do that.
If it was my choice, you wouldn't get a permit to build this pipeline unless I saw that data and it was provided to the first responders ahead of time to see whether or not this is a suitable place to put the pipeline. That's what these landowners are here and are questioning you for, is they don't want the safety hazards that they may encounter. But again, they don't have all of the information, and neither do we. And you keep telling us that, hey, we're going to get you that, but we won't do that until we get the permit for the pipeline. Well, at that point, it's too late. We want the information now.
I'll pass that along to the executives and tell them that's what we want right now.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Well, and I have to say, if our home is 600 feet from a rupture, it doesn't matter what the weather's like there.
No.
It does.
We're dead. We're in the dead zone, and we're
No,
coming
we're
up
not.
with studies because we haven't gotten one from you. And according to this study, immediate death happens within almost 2,000 feet, and we're 600 feet. We don't have
That's not
time.
true.
We don't have time.
Prove it.
Prove it then. We don't have time for any EMS to come to our home and save us because, for one thing, they can't drive in there. And one of the summit reps that was here last month said the main goal or the main job of first responders is to secure the boundaries. Well, what if we're in the middle of this cloud? No one can come in and help us. That's what happened in Sicarta.
How do you know if it's odorless and colorless? How do you know unless you is there gonna be a smell? I mean, I don't understand.
There's a fog.
It's
Watch
a,
that video. It's like, it looks like a low fog and it just spreads. There's a video.
right.
It-
Will that be
it
all
happened.
times of the year though? Or is it depending on what time,
I have
time
no
of break?
idea that the people that were close to that were having convulsions and they had some deaths.
The cloud stays on the ground.
Yes, it stays on the ground.
Stays on the
It's not
ground. Our house
dispersed.
is downwind from.
And no emergency vehicles can go into the cloud because it sucks the oxygen, it kills the vehicles even.
Can you answer to that,
Rod?
Rod?
The dispersion modeling that we have reviewed is about 150 feet away, 50,000 parts per million from the release location. And as it moves further away from that hot zone, it disperses into the atmosphere down to 20,000 parts per million. And then after 300 feet, it's dispersed enough to where there is no hazard. So I understand that people have read and heard other things. And I can't argue that point. That you can have your own opinion about it, but that's what we are seeing with our dispersion modeling so far. We will have monitoring equipment purchased that goes, it's called fence line monitoring for that goes to our SCADA system at our headquarters in Ames, Iowa, that reads the levels of a release along the system. The first responders will also be equipped with CO2, O2 monitoring equipment, as well as our operations teams that run the pipeline system. They're called right-of-way agents, and everybody will have O2 monitors and CO2 monitors to ensure that the public has an understanding of where the hot zone and the warm zone and the cold zones are.
I have a video. Would you want to see it?
It's the pipeline subject to tier 2 reporting.
Did you hear that, Rod?
No, I didn't hear that.
Is it subject to tier 2 reporting?
Is what subject to CO2 reporting?
Is the pipeline subject to tier 2 reporting? Tier 2
No,
reporting is.
that's tankage. That's for hazardous materials, tier 2 reporting to the state police. We're following PHMSA's regulations 195, and we will be reporting to PHMSA as required for any releases of the system.
Send me the link.
I want to do that.
But
I'm not good with that.
2 weeks ago, Wright County Monitor, on the last page, there was a letter to the editor. It's got some pictures of the that test they did in Australia, I think, of the simulated rupture of the CO2 pipeline. If you read the Monitor, which apparently nobody does anymore, but it was a full page letter to the
Is
editor.
that last week's?
I think it was a week before, but I think.
What's the response time to hazmat, you know, Adam?
Hazmat comes out of Fort Dodge, so calling them, probably getting them here, you're looking at 45 minutes to an hour.
What's the response time to somebody hazardous material or hazardous?
I don't think you can hear.
Rod,
Yes,
what is the response time for Summit Carbon Solutions for hazmat or for hazardous materials? What is your intended response time?
with our personnel that we're operationally going to have along the pipeline system and for maintenance of the system and for maintenance of the capture facilities, they could be anywhere on the system at any given time. So our response time should be no more than an hour to 30 minutes to an hour to anywhere along the system based on obviously where is the location of the release. We can't predetermine that.
So another question that I have is that the pipeline for as many miles as they're going through Wright County, we have a lot of small towns. Dow's will be a couple, about 2 miles, is it?
Yeah.
Within 2 miles. Goldfield, if it goes right to the ethanol plant will be right there. And you said, how far, you said that within 300 feet, there's no hazard, that it just dissipates or dispersion data?
Depending on atmospheric conditions, correct. Like if you're upwind of the 300, you know, the hot zone, you have less than 300 feet, obviously.
Yes, sir.
One comment to make just in regards to his comment on the 30 minutes to an hour for the operational personnel. The actual operation of the line itself, that the SOPs and the shutdown mechanics that'll be in place will be instantaneous. I mean, that'll be remotely monitored from that control room in Ames, Iowa.
Mhm.
So just because an operator might be 30 minutes away, the procedure set in place to properly and adequately shut down the line in the event of anomaly is instantaneous. You're not waiting an hour for anything to take place with the line itself.
So your leakage would be contained to that 20 miles.
Well, the 20 miles is a minimum. That's not,
That's what, about what you showed on the map last.
16-inch pipeline, 20 miles and 16-inch pipe. So
So
12-inch, we're gonna have. Oh,
looks like we have,
That's not giving me much comfort. There's 20 miles worth of CO2 that will be
I see.
escaping from this.
so we have about, it looks like 5 valves in Wright County. So you can see your map, it's the little red ribbons.
Yeah.
So there's likely not gonna be a lot of a 20-mile spot of Wright County that between valves. So that's like the minimum. So there must be 20 miles between,
Right.
but it could be less. So we have less mileage between these valves in Wright County.
20 miles is just a starting point.
Yeah,
And then through
that's-
your engineering design study and risk review, you add valves in as needed.
So what I handed out has a map in there. That's like that.
So question, if you guys think this is safe. And there's no concern for our health, why isn't there an independent study? Because if you guys are doing the study, there's an integrity level that we don't trust any of you. Like we flat out do not trust you. So, my family's been harassed since September 2021. Since this thing came to town, they've been stalked, they've been threatened, they have been trespassed on. So you tell me where the confidence is in your data from the rest of the people in this room, because they're similar experiences. So you're telling us to trust us, trust us, trust us. And then there's a mafia style of influence that you're trying to do upon us to sign easement, so you get your threshold for what you need for this project. So what are you scared of in an independent study for this plume study? Why aren't you doing it?
300 feet is not. Right. Anyway.
If there is no threat, an independent study, not associated with with carbon capture companies, not associated with Rastetter, not associated with anybody. If they do an independent study, then that's data that is reliable, not the in-house, we're gonna give you this data to make you feel better, but the integrity level is not there. There's no integrity, because you've proven that there isn't. So
Can I second that?
Independent study.
So right now, they're doing a study with saturated. Dean,
Yeah.
maybe you can speak a little bit more on this. About the,
I've not heard of any independent study.
Dean, do you have any information on the ISAC doing an independent study?
on the dispersion of the CO2?
There is no studies that are being done, at least to my knowledge, with the exception that PIMSA is supposedly rewriting the rules for CO2, liquid CO2 pipelines. And that's in response to the break that happened down in Mississippi. But to my knowledge, there isn't any independent studies that are going on concerning that.
You know, it looks like it's almost the cart's ahead of the horse on this, is because you don't have the studies. We're not sure about the safety. You still want to go forward and build it. but there's so many questions that are unknown. And I totally agree with the landowners. It's like, it's almost like we're a guinea pig.
Yeah, it's not new technology. There's over 5,000 miles that are currently in service in the United States today. So the reason that it gets so much, limelight here in the north or in the Midwest is because it's the largest of its kind that's going to be put into service in the world. I mean, this will be the largest carbon capture and sequestration project in the world at the end of the day. I mean, there's a line up in North Dakota that's been in serviceable operation for over 30 years. It's over 200 miles long. And again, it's a smaller example of what this is going to be. And the size of the line is not going to differ when it comes to the operation at the end of the day. It's just a larger scale.
And with all those, they've never done studies in the past.
I can't speak to what others have done or not done.
You said there's 5,000 miles and it's been done for over, how many pipelines has Summit Carbon Solutions put in now?
Summit Carbon Solutions was brought together to build this line. As far as.
So you have no background experience in building CO2 pipelines?
We all have background experience in building pipelines. The process of actually building the line and putting the line in the service is not going to differ from product to product besides a few operational requirements. I mean.
But no
that's just-
CO2
it should.
pipelines.
But the safety is,
I'm sorry.
She asked how many pipelines you've been in charge of that carried hazardous CO2.
I have not been.
That's what she asked. So it's all an unknown.
And I think that's what concerns most of the landowners is the unknown.
Well, I'm seeing this video that the rupture that did happen. It's very scary. The 911 calls.
And any amount of water that might enter eventually and how many wells there are, I mean, any kind of water that enters that pipeline makes carbonic acid with CO2 and it's very corrosive. Are you aware of that? I mean, do you even?
Yes.
What are you gonna do about that? How do you know there's, and that's, I mean, just in my county, 46 miles of pipeline. How can you guarantee that there'll absolutely never be any water of any kind seeping into the pipeline?
Again.
That will help cause erosion.
Correct. I mean, any pipeline company is gonna have what's called an integrity management plan in place, and that's gonna be part of the ongoing practice that the company follows to ensure the integrity of the line in the long run.
And even for people who don't sign.
I mean,
voluntary
even
easements?
regardless of how the easement is taking place on a property, it's not gonna diminish the quality of the product that's put in the ground. Because they're not, this will be, and this is something that we promote. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we're testing 100% of our wells. It's not required. It's, if you follow, the federal requirement, they require you to test 10% of your wells, so 1 every 10. We're testing 100% of our wells, and that's non-destructive examination. It's going to be the X-ray examination. It's going to go through a level 1 and level 2 auditor, and then we're going to hire a third-party group, which would contain a level 3 auditor that will further, it's a separation from that company that will report directly to us that is checking those wells as well. That's 100% X-ray on every well that is conducted on this project during construction. That typically is not done. That's something that we are doing,
How
but
do we know that really will happen when we're not allowed to talk?
I'm telling you it will happen.
but you work for turnkey.
I work for Summit.
Land agent that holds a lot also, but
So you're the
they may come back
expert.
and change their mind. So,
The question, who's building pipe?
Pipeline construction contractors.
So is that Rastetter's pipeline construction company?
Now,
no, they're all from out of state.
Okay.
Oklahoma, Texas.
bring the ones in who have the experience
Yeah.
as far as with the pipeline construction.
And who will do the monitoring after the 45Q tax credit windfalls has expired and we've sold it to someone else? And I have concerns about the longevity of the pipeline. Who's
I mean,
gonna clean it up
As far as,
when the money's run out?
I mean, you're making an assumption.
Well.
I mean, ultimately, the obligations that are put in place with the easements that are being signed right now are indefinite. They don't diminish from buyer to buyer at the end of the day. That easement is the Bible, and all rules and all regulations per that easement have to be followed from owner to owner at the end of the day. regardless of who takes ownership of the line itself. And to speak to your other question, I know you had a question on what's the anticipated life of the line. This line will be in service and operational long after I'm expired. I mean, with the technology that's in place today during the actual construction process and through your cathodic protection, through your IMP plan, through your required regulation and maintenance of the line itself. I mean, these lines can exist and operate well over 100 years. I mean, there are lines that were put in the 40s that are still in operation today, and the process back then was much cruder than it is today.
Right, but will that be maintained when there's some money to be made from the tax? I know that's speculating.
If it's a speculation,
I can't see it. This wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for that. That's the only reason it's not going to be done. And when that's gone, who's going to clean it up?
Is anybody from Summit gonna live anywhere near these lines? And why is their office in Ames? I would think you'd want to be closer to the actual pipeline.
I mean, if you're gonna make that argument, I'm from Houston. I've had lines literally all around me for my entire life.
There's only 5,000 miles on
Due to
No.
and there's 34 miles of Danbury's down in the car shop. And
I've got a
that's a
question.
failure.
I got a question about the pipeline simply because when they made the Titanic, they said, never sink, never sink. It never made it across the ocean. How are we guaranteed that this won't blow up? It's safe, it's safe.
Never say never.
Yeah. And I've been around long enough to know that what's on paper may look good, may sound good, but by God, when you start farming, you're down to plan B and C and D, the whole alphabet. You just don't know. And we've got all the people coming in from Texas, Oklahoma. We have experience with pipeline. You don't know what Iowa seasons are like. A 4-foot pipe in the ground isn't gonna last because you're gonna have freezing and thawing. It's gonna heat that pipe. Those connections are gonna weaken. Next thing you know, you're gonna have leaks all over the place.
The big problem is the elephant in the room for me. You're not a utility. You can take your eminent domain, put it where the sun don't shine, but you just made a very false statement. You said, if the pipeline was sold and stuff, everything goes with it, and right?
correct, the easement transferred with ownership of the
No, it
line.
doesn't.
It does.
I got the easement right here.
I'm telling you it does.
So.
Okay.
Company shall have the right to sell, assign, appropriate mortgage or lease this agreement as amended from time to time. An easement under it in whole and part, to everybody in the world, blah, blah, and release, and then the company shall be released from its obligations under this agreement.
The company that is selling it is released from the obligations, not the company that purchases it.
So how do you guarantee that the purchaser, a new company, would have to abide by those?
It's in the easement. The company that's being released is obviously that would be the company that is selling, because they would not be obligated at the end of the day, because the new company that is purchasing is taking those obligations on.
I'll believe you for now. I'll know.
Well, Johnson did that with their baby powder. 3M's doing it with their earplugs. They form a new company, form a subsidiary, and it goes bankrupt. So as soon as the pipeline's in the ground, the 45Q tax credit is for capture and sequester. It's not for transport. You can sell that to a subsidiary. You probably will. That has no assets, essentially. It's got a pipe underground, which is worth nothing. it's gonna take bankruptcy. And liability, it isn't gonna have any. What Sackler did with his. With the opioid epidemic.
Well, the bottom line is they're gonna come steal our farmland, ruin the farmland that they go through. And that is farmland that our boys, that is gonna be it's a generational farm. And our boys are going to farm it. And it will ruin the field that they're going through is gumbo, wet. You can't work it when it's wet. And that's what they're gonna do. And then what about rocks that they dig up out of these fields? What are you gonna do with these boulders that we have to go out and dig out? Are you guys gonna take care of them?
They're removed by the contractor.
They're gonna be removed and taken away. But the bottom line is they're gonna steal our land. We don't wanna sell, we don't want an easement, we don't want a pipe.
I have a question, going back to your safety thing that you handed out, the bottom one, assessment intervals every 5 years. Can you explain the stopping process to me?
So the process that this is speaking about would be our inline inspection tool. So it would be what's called a pig, and it would go through the line and check for different things like corrosion.
And how do you do that? Explain what a pig is.
Sure.
I mean, talk to me like
I can explain. So when at the beginning and end of your line segments, you're gonna have what's called a launcher and a receiver, which is essentially a tube that you would place what's called an inline inspection tool in, which is it would adhere to the inner diameter of the pipe. And it's a specialized tool that is pushed at typically 2.5 feet per second. And what it's going to detect is it's going to detect any kind of metal loss on the inside of the pipe, and then also for external dents. And based on the severity of if there is a dent detected, or if there is an area where metal loss is detected, that will register in a certain range. And based on that range that it registers in will dictate the remediation policy per federal government that we're required to take, whether it's a 90-day repair or a 30-day repair or an immediate repair. And that's conducted, like she mentioned, every 5 years or so, sometimes a little bit less. And then that's on top of the typical maintenance pigging that's going to be developed it'll be part of the normal operation procedures. So in a pig is just a normal operation pig will just be like it's a type of plastic with sometimes it'll have scrapers on the side of it and just like a metal wire brush. It depends on the system and the operational requirements. But that's what I call the pig. It's a little tube that essentially goes into the pipe.
And pig stands for, so everybody knows.
I don't know what pig stand. Never heard if it is an acronym or not. That's just the common term for it in the process.
It's a pipeline integrity gauge. So the stopping, because reading about this, in Canada, a pig got stuck.
Correct.
And what happens then when a pig gets stuck?
Depending on the situation, I mean, the line would be shut down. You'd have to.
Yeah,
The line.
in Canada.
Dig it up.
They did, that's what I'm wanting him to say.
Correct.
They dug up, okay, so if that happens, and stuff happens. But, okay, so they come back in and have to dig this up.
Mhm.
So what kind of compensation does that landowner, will have to come back in and disrupt that whole area, and within that permanent 50 feet easement, which will it'll disrupt whether you're harvesting, planting, whatever. And there's nothing that the landowner, if they sign this easement, can do about that disruption when Summit is offering crop damages for 3 years.
So I can answer your question.
Yeah.
So
please.
any damages associated with the line, and even if it was a normal operational anomaly that we would have to go out and, if the pig did get stuck, I mean, that's another example though. Say we had an anomaly on your property that required us to, if you were in full season, you had crops planted, we had to drive out since, our normal access would be through the easement itself, so we essentially drive down a row of your crops to get out to that anomaly. At the end of the day, you're paid for any amount of damage. So you have your initial crop damages and your easement payment. That's a one-time payment upfront. And then anything that falls outside of that, that would come from normal operations, from anything associated with the operation or, you know, long-term construction of the line itself. If it results in any kind of damage, you're paid for that at the end of the day. It's not a one-time payment and then you're left, you know, holding an empty sack at the end of the day. If there's any kind of call out or damage outside of that, the landowner will be properly compensated for any kind of damages associated with the line, even well after construction.
And that's in the easements.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know exactly where it is in the easement, but that's normal operational procedure with a pipeline company.
Damages above and beyond the first, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, I've done some reading on the CO2 pipelines, and you're on the, second line, it says there have been 0 fatalities related to CO2. I don't know, for some reason I thought down in Mississippi that there were some people.
200 people affected. There were 44 that seeked hospital attention, but nobody was killed.
I can send you the study that's
And
referenced.
in
on here as well.
Okay.
The PHMSA report is a public document of that incident. It's available online.
Okay.
There are people that are, but their quality of life is still not the same. They still have health issues.
There are
They
people that.
still have permanent health issues from being exposed.
Again, I
They're
just
disabled.
recommend you do your
Yeah.
research.
Yes.
We have.
You're talking about safety, it blows me away that you're wanting to just go ahead and do this quick before a film study is done. It's too late to have setbacks from school, from home, if that's the main part that just kind of blows me away right now. I don't know if you can explain that, but how can you go ahead with something like this that could be so dangerous to so many people? I mean, you've worked with software. It can't be that hard. It's not that difficult. And you're not doing it.
Following suit. I mean, if it was, I would understand your argument a little bit better. This was the first of its kind and not explored. But I mean, there's 5,000 miles in service today that all follow the same federal regulation that we're following as far as for their construction and operation.
But there are no regulations for CO2.
Yes, ma'am. there are.
PHMSA is working on, PHMSA needs to update.
It's regulated through CFR 195.
Which is gonna be changed.
Those are old. They're old. And you keep saying there's 5,000 miles, but it doesn't make me feel any better. I'm sorry.
It's 5,000 miles down in Louisiana and Texas.
When our home is 600 people. I hope you can understand that.
Is it true that Summit is pushing to get this done as quickly as possible so they can get started? Because once you start, it's almost impossible to stop them.
IUB moved up their court date to October. It was supposed to be in May of 24, and they moved it up to October of this year.
Because once they
They can
start,
only get federal funding through there's a time period.
Yeah, but it's gonna extend it.
but now if the whole thing is you're piping this up, put it in a hole in North Dakota, why don't you dig a hole around Isle Falls and stick it down there?
Doesn't have the same geological structure to allow for long-term.
No, it doesn't have an oil field near it, is what you're saying.
Permanent sequestration is a requirement to even receive the.
It's gotta disperse, stick it in the hole and let it disperse. Forget the whole pipeline. And yeah, why not truck it? Put up storage bins, truck it. I was told, oh, that's too dangerous to haul it on the road. My God, how many times you go by a CO2 truck going up the interstate? And like I said, there's no guarantee this thing is not going to blow up in your face. And the thing it is, it's our lives. It's our livelihood that's affected, not you guys. You'll go back to Texas or Oklahoma.
You want to go back with your educational portion of it that you come for?
Really, today was just for a Q&A. Obviously, everybody has a lot of safety concerns. These are just a few of the PHMSA requirements that we're required to follow. it's very extensive. So if you're curious, if you really are concerned about safety, I would highly recommend looking it up. It's pretty easy to find. When you have the 49 CFR 195, you can find it and read through it. And that's what we mean when we say do your own research. This is coming straight from the government.
Revising everything. This is old.
And
I'm
we-
sorry, but it's really different.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why this is, we gotta get this in, because you'll be grandfathered in.
That's not
That's
necessarily
not
true. PHMSA could, place us out of 195 and place us in something else, and then if the risk is severe enough, then they could require us to shut down our line and adhere to their new requirements. I mean, that's something that they would do. They've done it in the past.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And what you say. You say you work for Summit, but. You aren't under oath. I mean. Bruce Rastetter there backing you up.
I'm just answering your questions, the best of my ability. Based on my experience.
I think as supervisors, we're on the front line of this because we have our owners and neighbors coming up to us and we have no say. And then when we were, and I'm gonna take this off of the minutes of another meeting, but a county supervisor's duty is to protect, preserve the rights, the privileges, the property of the county and to its residents, to preserve and improve the peace, the safety, the health, the welfare, and comfort and convenience of its residents. And we feel that that's all been taken away from us. So,
Betty, can you ask the gentleman that's supposed to be online, how long would it take? How much would it cost? And how long would it take to run a plume test? You go over here to Prestige and open up the tank, that's where they harvest all the pigs with it, so it should be pretty simple and easy to do a test and wouldn't cost much at all.
Rod, did you hear the question? Rod Dillon on Zoom?
Did not.
So the question is if you were to start and run a test of the dispersion data and run some tests with the CO2, how long would that take to do a full investigation of and gathering the data?
I guess I don't understand the question. If I would run a test of the dispersion?
If you were to do a plume test, just to see what it does in that plume area, how long would that take?
A minute?
There's so many variables that have to be figured into that, the humidity of the day, the wind of the day, the temperature, there's just so many factors that, but I'm assuming that somebody out there has got a computer program that you can model that on to input those different things to see, okay, it's never a good idea to put this within 600 feet of a occupied dwelling. Or it's never a good idea to do it within 2,000 feet of an occupied dwelling because the CO2 concentrations in the worst case scenario, it is going to be higher than what a human could survive. So, I mean, I would think that modeling is out there.
You would think that some would have that modeling.
They have modeling.
For a company, we did water treatment plants and we had to do piping layouts. And we also had fluid dynamic software. So I've run it, I've done studies, I haven't done a flume study, but the software is easy to acquire and people even like me can run it. And I know you can put in all the variables and some days you just have to say, this is our baseline and just throw in some variables and then you get a, a starting point, but I mean, it is possible to, I mean, I was like,
Yeah, with 5,000 miles, why hasn't one been done, or why is it?
yeah,
I mean,
and we did.
I just can't imagine with that. I mean, that's a lot of miles and a lot of different.
Well, Starship was one, that was pretty much a flume study.
That was, I mean, that was information we did before, we ever built pipe and got started working on a plan. We would go through all of our studies and we were doing headers and mixing studies, but it was all fluid dynamics and there was a lot of different things that software could do, and that was stuff we did right off the bat, so to make sure everything worked.
Well, you can see your biggest question today to summit is, what's the risk? I mean, we need to know that. I mean, I think if we had that, and maybe it's not as bad as we think, we don't know. That's our trouble. We do not know what the risk is. Being at 600 feet from a house, I live in Goldfield. I'm meeting with the ethanol plant this afternoon on this. I want to know the risk for Goldfield. I live in Goldfield. I've got a lot of people I know in Goldfield. I know it's got to come to the ethanol plant. It's got to depart the ethanol plant. We're right there. Same way as you're 600 feet from the house. Our town is right there. There's people working at the ethanol plant that are from that town and surrounding towns. I want to know what the risk is, and that's one of my big questions, which apparently I probably won't get answered today.
I can't speak to the dispersion study. I'm not a part of that at all, but I can send you one of the studies that I know has been done that's referenced in this handout that was funded by the Department of Transportation. It talks about CO2 pipelines and incidents with CO2 pipelines. So I can send you that. I'll make sure to send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
And as far as for the emergency responders, are they going to be paid for their time? Their training and paid for their time for the training? Because that's usually a volunteer group. And I know they're not in it to make money, but they don't want to spend a week in training when their regular jobs they have to go to and spend their evenings in training for a week or 2 weeks. What's it going to involve for them?
Yes.
Hey, Rod, is there continuing training? Because,
The yes
first-
was for what?
Yes.
Yes.
Was the yes for being paid for their time during the training?
Yes.
Well, will training continue on? Because I mean, first responders, come and go over the years. Is that a process that you will continue then? Is there
Absolutely. I've already spoke with the emergency managers of each county that have met with that said that the same question. And we're planning every 6 months to do a training program, or as personnel get replaced or new people come on.
Okay, thank you.
So again, just speaking, I know you guys think these are old regulations and they don't apply, but that is answered by PHMSA, that question. So if you guys do want to take a look, a lot of your questions may be answered by looking through these.
What about
requirements.
electric vehicles for first responders? If you've got people in town in the cloud of CO2, how are first responders going to get to those people?
Rod, you have a question?
Yeah, I have no reason, they should have no reason for a fire truck to drive through a CO2 release. We're going to set up command post stations, staging areas along the pipeline system based on wind direction and developing our tactical plans. As if something happens, we'll meet at those locations outside of the hot zone and we'll walk it from there. This isn't a big response zone. These response zones are not miles. These response zones are in feet.
So you're saying you're not going to go in after anyone in the hot zone?
I didn't say that.
How are you going to reach them then?
Once we go to the staging area and determine our hot zone, the fire department, for one, will have their turnout gear and air packs on and enter into the areas of whom may be in the hot zone.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, in January. With 4 feet of snow.
Okay.
Could be covering miles, it might.
Jason, can you speak? Has they met with emergency management or with you?
No.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk this all day,
Yeah.
seriously. I guess we all gotta do our own investigations. I don't know if you need names, keep in touch with these people, or
I figure I'll send Betty, the study I was talking about, and if you guys, I have my card, so I can hand that to anybody who wants it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for coming. I think we have more questions and answers, but I do appreciate you at least coming and being here with the people that have concerns.
Well, we appreciate your time, and I plan on continuing to come back. I'll keep bringing these regulations that we can look over together, so. Thank you.
thank you.
If any questions, if there are any remaining or lingering questions, I'll be out here for a few minutes and
Okay.
we'll do one have a discussion.
And if anybody wants information or wants to be on an email, like if she sends me something and you want like an email to know what it was, put on your way out, go ahead and put your name and email or address and I can get you the information, okay?
Thank you for your time.
And we'll go into recess for 5 minutes.
Good.
Okay, that's it. Yep, and I got a copy of it over there. We'll put those in Dean's mailbox so he has copies of it.
Okay, we're back in session.
He's at ground zero.
Yeah, I'm at ground zero.
He's first dead.
You usually don't CO2 in your greenhouse.
No,
You don't?
no.
She'll tuck it in there so that your plants grow.
Yeah, we've got it in there with our plants that grow, so no, we don't use it. Well, we use it, yes, but not what's naturally made.
Oh, okay.
I think you should just pump it straight in there.
No. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Judy.
Okay, we're back in session.
You unmute yourself.
Yes. Why is that again?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll go back to number 6, review and act on resolution 2023-12 on maximum property tax dollars.
Last week you held a public hearing on the maximum property tax dollars. And there was no comments, no concerns at that time. It is for general county services, $6,230,869. And under the rural county services, $2,642,556. This is the maximum that you would be able to, through your budgeting, ask for. Of course, there is House or Senate File 181, and I don't know if it's changed numbers now for this week. It did not pass yet last week. They must have had more discussion. So it will hopefully be signed this week, and then we'll have 10 days to redo our valuation system. And even though numbers are going to change, things are going to look different, this maximum is, we cannot go over it. This just, it can go lower, but it cannot go higher.
Okay.
So
I would make a motion to approve resolution 2023-12.
I'll second.
Carl, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Rick, aye. All ayes. Thank you.
you go ahead and sign.
You want a couple of them or just one?
Two would be great. That'd be fabulous. And Dean, I'll have you sign this when you get back.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Adam,
Morning.
good morning.
I have 3 items for your agenda today. One is the 28E agreement with the Iowa DOT and 9 counties. We are one of the 9 counties for the RAISE grant. For our bridge 210 down by Voss Pit.
Okay.
So this covers what we will need to reimburse the Iowa DOT or pay HDR for the grant work. So that's what this 28E covers. You can see that on page number 2 on, or 1, the grant application work. Number 1, 2, says that we will be responsible for 1/9 of the share of the cost for the grant application work to HDR. And then if you look under number 4 on page 2, it goes over all of the counties that are involved and what bridges and structures they have for each one. You can see ours on
Page 4.
page 4. Our preliminary estimate is 2.75 million. Funds requested through the RAISE grant is 2.22 million.
So this will be one huge pot of money that'll be divided up amongst.
Correct. We're close to 25 million, we're asking through this RAISE grant.
Okay.
As the 9 counties.
Is it gonna be all or nothing if they come back? Okay,
Yes.
but they have those dollars to give though.
Yes, there is. RAISE grant is coming from. In connection with that, I don't know if you want to take on these separately or if you want to take them both, but item number 2 is consider a resolution 2023-13. This is in support of the joint RAISE grant agreement, a letter of support for the 2023 Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity RAISE grant project. So this is just your way of supporting the RAISE grant. Supporting what we're doing for the RAISE grant, trying to acquire those funds to build this bridge. We will help, I spoke with Dean, we will help you write your letter of support, which shouldn't take us very long, and I'll have Dean sign.
We'll probably do them separately because we need an approval for the 28E cooperative agreement for rebuilding America infrastructure with sustainable and equitable RAISE grant project.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And again, we're voting on both, or are we voting on?
No, just the first one, the 28E agreement first, because the resolution will go by roll call.
Okay.
We
Aye.
have a motion and I second. All in favor?
Aye.
All ayes.
Sign, I put Dean's name as chair, but I didn't know, you forgot that he's gonna be gone, so you can sign that, and then Betty, would you sign that, please? Then you can have your copy.
Then I would make a motion to approve resolution 2023-13, which is the RISE grant.
I'll second that.
Dean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Carl?
Aye.
Rick? Aye. All ayes.
The Iowa DOT, in my email to you, the Iowa DOT or this County Engineers Association post that to the state
Okay.
for us. So, because they're gathering all of the signature pages and gonna be one submittal.
This time.
Okay, my final item is just a quick update. So blades were out last week, widening, tapering, drifts where they need to, working intersections. They were also starting their spot load maps for the spring here, so identifying areas in their routes, which will need additional rock that was, you know, from damage over the winter. Doing some sundry, which was work around the buildings on their equipment. Trucks ran their routes on Monday afternoon for accumulating thawing, and they went to push the slump off. And they also were doing sundry the rest of the week, working on trucks, working on buildings. We completed 4 work orders, 1 repair, 2 service, and 1 service through the sheriff's office. No winter operations and
Clear skies.
we're getting better, so.
The roads are getting better, but where they're bad, and I know you can't do anything with them, but they aren't too bad. Once they start drying out, they're pretty good shape.
That's correct. Yep.
Just hope we don't have a humongous amount of frost blight this year. Should be interesting.
We'll see.
Is what it is, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any old business? New business?
I had no meetings.
Farm Bureau.
We're going to the meetings.
It's the last thing.
Meetings?
Your meeting's great.
Yes, we had Farm Bureau. I took Adam and Betty with, and they did an excellent job. Adam did a nice job presenting, and Betty also, she always does a great job of explaining everything to them. Not a whole lot for questions, but I think it was very good to take Adam there to let him know what it costs to do gravel roads and where his money comes from. And basically, just in general, what is the county? What are the road workers' responsibilities? Stuff like that. I think it went very well myself.
Yep.
We were there approximately, what, a half hour?
Yeah, it was very short.
Wow.
It was really good.
Also.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for doing that, making that meeting, making it happen on time. Did you get an opportunity to meet the new regional director?
Yes.
Okay.
Interim director.
Yeah.
Then there's some other lady there too from Des Moines.
Okay.
What was her name? Do you remember, Adam? But they had a relatively good crowd there, a normal crowd, I think.
It's a nice younger group of people.
Yeah, a lot of younger ones.
I thought that was awesome.
That's
I
our future
also
leaders.
had-
Mm-hmm.
I also had second judicial district by Zoom. And the state's trying to take them over as well. It's just I won't swear, but it's just between that and workforce, it's a nightmare. The state's trying to take everything over and all they do is screw it up.
All the alignment stuff.
Alignment my ass, it's a misalignment. Trying to think what else I had. I don't think I had anything else, and I will be gone out of town for just a little over 2 weeks, but I got a meeting on the 16th for workforce, because we're probably gonna depart from that completely. Because it's a no-win situation. They still have to take care of it as far as job training for people that are unemployed, to get them jobs. They still gotta do everything. We have no money involvement with it, and they've been screwing it up for the 10 years I've been on it. And it's an absolute nightmare, and a number of counties have already gone away from it, and I'm pretty sure our region is going away from it on the 16th. So I'll zoom in on that meeting, and then I also will zoom in, providing everything goes well during the next 2 Mondays for this meeting. Carl.
No meetings last week. Economic development tomorrow morning. I will be in St. Paul on Wednesday with a potential client. Thursday. Potential client.
Super. And then in the Belmont meeting coming up
Wednesday night.
Well, keep in mind that I'm gonna be out of town. If you would please explain to him I'd like to be there, but It happens.
I can make it happen.
Thank you. Dean,
I didn't have any meetings, so no updates.
okay, thank you, Dean.
What day are you
Yep.
back, Dean?
We will be back probably Saturday.
Okay.
But if anybody's got questions or needs help with anything, I'll be in the plane Tuesday. By Wednesday, I'll be back by phone if you need something.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you, Dean.
you bet. See ya.